Right now, somewhere in a university in Cairo, a team of engineers is running the same calculation they have run 100 times before. They are trying to figure out how you move a 70-ton block of granite without a crane, without a truck, without a wheel. They keep getting the same answer. You can't. And yet someone did, 2.5 million times. Across this planet there are places that should not exist, buildings that shouldn't stand, precision that shouldn't have been possible, engineering that makes our best modern architects go quiet. These aren't theories. These aren't conspiracy stories. These are facts carved in stone, and we still don't know how they got there. This is the story of 8 ancient sites that defy explanation. And the more you know about them, the less sense they make. Site 1. The Great Pyramid of Giza, Egypt. Let's start with the one you think you know, because you don't. Not really. Most people see the Great Pyramid and think, impressive, big, old, sure. But let me give you the numbers and pay attention, because this is where it stops making sense. Built around 2560 BC, that's 4,500 years ago, the Great Pyramid contains roughly 2.3 million stone blocks. Each one weighs between 2.5 and 15 tons. Some of the granite blocks deep in the king's chamber weigh 70 tons. That is the weight of 10 full-grown African elephants. In a room, underground, placed with such precision that modern engineers still argue about how the ceiling doesn't collapse. The base covers 13 acres. It is so level the entire 13-acre foundation that modern laser measurements find a margin of error of just 2.1 centimeters. Not inches, centimeters across 13 acres. Modern skyscraper foundations don't achieve that. The 4 sides face true north, south, east, and west with an accuracy of 0.05 degrees. GPS didn't exist. Satellites didn't exist. Compasses didn't exist. Now here's the part that keeps engineers up at night. To build this in the 26-year reign of Pharaoh Khufu, workers would have had to place one block every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes, around the clock, every single day, for 26 years straight, not one shift, not a 9 to 5, around the clock, non-stop, for 26 years. And here is what we have zero written records of: how they cut the granite, how they moved it, how they lifted it. The ancient Egyptians documented everything: their grocery lists, their love letters, their tax records. But there is not a single document describing the construction of the Great Pyramid. It is as if they built the most complex structure in human history and then decided not to write it down. And that's just the outside. In 2023, a team of scientists using cosmic ray imaging discovered a previously unknown corridor hidden inside the pyramid. 9 meters long, right behind the main entrance, sealed and untouched for 4,500 years. Nobody knows what it leads to. Nobody knows what is next. The pyramid isn't finished giving up its secrets, and neither are we. Site 2, Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. In 1994, a Kurdish shepherd was walking his flock across a barren hilltop in southeastern Turkey. He kicked a rock. That rock changed everything we thought we knew about human civilization. What archaeologists eventually uncovered beneath that hill was a complex of massive stone temples. T-shaped limestone pillars, some of them 18 feet tall, weighing between 10 and 20 tons each, carved with extraordinary images of animals: lions, foxes, scorpions, vultures. Intricate, detailed, intentional art, on stone, in the middle of nowhere. This was Göbekli Tepe, and the radiocarbon dating came back and stunned the entire field. It was built around 9600 BC. That is not a typo. 9600 BC, making it roughly 6,000 years older than Stonehenge and 7,000 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. This is the oldest known monumental architecture on Earth, by thousands of years. Here is the problem. In 9600 BC, according to everything we previously understood, humans were hunter-gatherers, nomadic, small bands of people following animals across the landscape. They didn't have permanent settlements. They didn't have writing. They didn't have agriculture. They supposedly didn't have the social organization to build anything, let alone this. Because building Göbekli Tepe wasn't simple. These pillars had to be quarried from bedrock using stone tools. We can see the marks in the nearby quarry. They had to be shaped, carved, transported, and erected across a complex that covers acres of hillside. This required the coordination of hundreds of people. Sustained, organized effort, probably over generations, from people who were supposed to be wandering after deer and berries. The lead archaeologist, Klaus Schmidt, who spent his life studying this site, said something that stopped the academic world cold. First came the temple. Then came the city. Not the other way around, which is what every textbook said. He was suggesting that the desire to build this sacred place forced humans to invent agriculture, to stay in one place long enough to feed the workforce. That religion, or at least the impulse to build something monumental, came before civilization, not after. We have now scanned the entire hill with ground-penetrating radar. Less than 5% of the site has been excavated. There are hundreds more pillars still underground. And around 8000 BC, someone deliberately buried it all, the entire complex, filled it in with rubble and dirt, on purpose. We don't know why. We don't know who ordered it. We don't even know what they were worshipping here. But whatever it was important enough to organize an entire society around. Site 3, Baalbek, Lebanon. In the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, there is a Roman temple complex called Baalbek. It is extraordinary. Towering columns, ornate carvings, one of the best preserved examples of Roman architecture in the world. But the Romans didn't build the part that's impossible to explain. Beneath the Roman temple, forming its foundation, are the Baalbek megaliths, 3 colossal stone blocks, each one roughly 64 feet long and 14 feet high. Their weight is between 800 and 1,000 tons each. There is no confirmed record of how they were placed, no Roman engineer's account, no diagram, no construction log. For context, when a team of engineers needed to move a 200-ton industrial boiler in the 20th century, it took one of the largest cranes in existence, 6 weeks of preparation, and a second crane brought in just to fit it into position. These blocks are 5 times heavier, and they were placed with a precision so exact that you cannot fit a single sheet of paper between them. But the real story is in the quarry, about a quarter-mile from the temple, because there, half buried in the earth as if someone put down their tools mid-task and never came back, is the stone of the pregnant woman. 64 feet long, 19 feet wide, an estimated 1,650 tons. It is the largest known quarried stone block in human history, and it was never moved. It was never used. It just sits there in the quarry for thousands of years. The mainstream answer is that it was too heavy to move, so they abandoned it. But here is what makes that answer fall apart. They moved the 800-ton blocks. Those went into the foundation without apparent difficulty. So why stop at 1,650 tons? If you hit a stone too big to handle, wouldn't you cut it into smaller pieces? There are no chisel marks suggesting that was ever attempted. It is as if they quarried the biggest stone they ever attempted and then something happened. Something that stopped everything, instantly, and they never came back. We cannot explain how those foundation stones were moved. We cannot explain why the largest stone was abandoned. We cannot explain who built the original platform that the Romans built on top of. Mainstream archaeology says the Romans. Other researchers point to weathering patterns and construction techniques that predate Rome by thousands of years. The argument is still open. The stones aren't talking. Site 4, Sacsayhuaman, Peru. High above the city of Cusco in the Peruvian Andes, there is a fortress built by the Inca people. The walls consist of enormous stone blocks, some weighing 200 tons. They are cut and shaped into irregular polygonal forms. Each block is unique. Some have as many as 12 angles, and they fit together with zero mortar. No cement. No adhesive of any kind, just stone against stone. So precisely that after 500 years of earthquakes, and the Andes is one of the most seismically active regions on Earth, these walls still stand. While the Spanish colonial buildings built beside them with mortar have crumbled and been rebuilt multiple times, The Inca walls have not moved. A single piece of paper will not fit between many of these stones. Think about the engineering philosophy for a moment. The Spanish used mortar, which creates a rigid structure. When the earth shakes, rigid structures crack. The Inca made their stones slightly irregular, slightly able to shift and resettle. The earthquake moves them, but gravity brings them back. An architecture designed to survive earthquakes, centuries before we understood seismic engineering. And we are still using rigid mortar while the walls they built without any mortar are still standing. How did they cut these shapes? In each other. The archaeological record shows stone tools and copper tools. No iron, no steel. And yet Chief Engineer Jesse Warren, after examining similar Inca stonework, said, "Seeing how they moved these heavy 200-ton blocks, possibly thousands and thousands of years ago, I have no idea how they did this job. He is a professional engineer. That was his professional assessment. He has no idea, and neither does anyone else." Site 5, Stonehenge, England. Here is something most people don't know about Stonehenge. The stones you see, the famous towering sarsen stones forming the outer ring, those are not the most mysterious part. The most mysterious part is the smaller stones, the blue stones. They weigh between 2 and 5 tons each. Not the heaviest stones at Stonehenge, but the most troubling logistically. Because in 2024, researchers confirmed what had long been suspected. The blue stones at Stonehenge were quarried from the Preseli Hills in Pembrokeshire, Wales. That is 200 miles away. And that same year, researchers found that the altar stone near the center, a 6-ton piece of sandstone, came from Scotland. Scotland, hundreds of miles further north. The builders of Stonehenge were importing specific stone from specific places across the entire island of Britain. Not because it was convenient. This was the opposite of convenient. They chose those exact stones from those exact places for reasons we can only guess at. There was no wheel in Bronze Age Britain. There are no rivers connecting Wales to Salisbury Plain in any practical way, and yet the stones arrived and were placed, and were aligned with an accuracy to the solstices that still works today. If you stand in the center of Stonehenge on the summer solstice, the rising sun comes through the heel stone and strikes the altar stone, every year, without fail, after 4,500 years. And then there is the timeline. Construction began around 3000 BC. The final phase was completed around 1500 BC. That means Stonehenge was an active building project for 1,500 years, longer than the Roman Empire lasted, longer than the entire history of the United States multiplied by 7, generation after generation. No written plans, no drawings, no company keeping records. For 1,500 years, people kept coming back, kept building, kept adjusting. Whatever Stonehenge was for, 60 generations of people agreed it was worth everything they had. That is not engineering, that is devotion, and we still don't know what they were devoted to. Site 6, the Nazca Peru. Picture this. You are walking through the desert of southern Peru, flat, featureless, brutally hot. Around you, the ground is covered in reddish-brown iron oxide pebbles, the natural surface of the Nazca Desert. You see paths, lines. Someone has scraped away the dark top layer to reveal the lighter earth beneath. You follow one line. It goes perfectly straight for miles, without deviation, without any modern surveying instrument. Then you walk what seems like a meaningless tangle of cleared paths, and you have no idea what you are looking at. It is only when you get in a plane and look down that it reveals itself. A hummingbird 300 feet long, a spider 150 feet wide, a monkey with a spiraling tail stretching nearly 400 feet, a condor with a wingspan of 440 feet, over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric shapes, 70 animal and plant figures, spread across nearly 200 square miles of desert, created between 500 BC and 500 AD, by people who had no way to see them from above. The Nazca people had no balloons, no aircraft, no elevated vantage point capable of revealing these designs at the scale they were drawn. The figures are so large and so precise that they can only be fully appreciated from altitude, an altitude that did not exist for the people who made them. They designed art for an audience they could not reach, or an audience they believed could. Archaeologist Johann Reinhardt proposed that the lines were sacred pathways, ritual processional routes leading toward the mountains, toward the gods who controlled water. In one of the driest inhabited places on Earth, water was everything. The lines were prayers made physical, great enough to be seen from the heavens, detailed enough to carry meaning, and built to last, though nobody told them they would. Recently, researchers using AI and drone technology identified over 140 previously unknown geoglyphs in the region, including humanoid figures lining ancient pathways between settlements. The desert keeps giving up new ones. The most haunting fact about the Nazca lines is not their size. It is their survival. Almost no rain, very little wind. 2,000 years later, they look almost the same as the day they were made, as if the desert itself decided they were worth protecting. Site 7, Pumapuancayu, Bolivia. At 12,800 feet above sea level in the high Bolivian Altiplano, there is a site that has divided archaeologists more than almost any other on Earth. It is called Pumapunku, and the debate is not about its age or its purpose or who built it. The debate is simpler and more unsettling than any of that. The debate is, how? Pumapunku is scattered with H-shaped stone blocks, interlocking pieces made from andesite and red sandstone. Andesite is one of the hardest stones on Earth. It can scratch steel. It requires diamond-tipped tools in modern construction. These blocks are not roughly shaped. They have been cut with perfect right angles, precision drill holes, edges sharp enough to draw blood, uniform channels running along their lengths with identical cross-sections all the way through. And they interlock, like prefabricated construction pieces, like parts designed to slot together without mortar or binding of any kind. The precision is not approximate. It is exact. The kind of exact that requires measuring instruments, stable work surfaces, and repeatable manufacturing processes, none of which appear in the archaeological record for this culture and this period. The most accepted explanation involves stone hammers, copper chisels, and sand used as an abrasive. The same rock essentially cutting itself, infinitely slowly, with extraordinary patience. Is it theoretically possible? Yes. Given enough time and an almost religious obsession with precision, it is achievable. But then we arrive at the second problem. These blocks are massive, some weigh over 100 tons. The nearest andesite quarry is 10 kilometers away across the Bolivian Altiplano at altitude in thin air with no rivers nearby and no evidence of a road. And the site looks unfinished. The blocks are scattered. Some are broken. There is no evidence of a completed structure, only pieces clearly meant to become something. Something interrupted this project. We don't know what. We don't know who started it. We don't know what they were building. All we have are the pieces. Perfect, impossible pieces, scattered across a windswept plateau 12,800 feet above sea level, like a puzzle where someone hid the picture on the box. Site 8, the Hypogeum of Halsafili, Malta. Of all the sites in this video, this one is the most unsettling. Not because of its size, it is not as large as the Great Pyramid. Not because of its visual drama, it doesn't have the open-sky scale of Stonehenge or the mystery of the Nazca lines. It is unsettling because of what it does, what it was designed to do, to the people inside it. Beneath the island of Malta, cut directly into solid limestone rock, is the Hypogeum of Halsafili. It is an underground necropolis, a place of the dead, built in 3 levels descending into the earth. Dating to around 3,600 BC, it predates the Great Pyramid by over 1,000 years. The builders used no metal tools. They carved this entire complex, chambers, corridors, domed ceilings, decorative patterns, using antler tools and stone hammers. Into solid rock, underground in the dark, by firelight or oil lamp, chipping away stone by stone, room by room. When modern acoustic engineers were finally given access to study the space properly, they found something that changed the conversation entirely. The chambers of the hypogeum are not just underground rooms. They are acoustically engineered spaces. When you speak inside the oracle room, a specific chamber on the second level, your voice does not simply echo. It reverberates. It multiplies. It fills the entire underground complex with a resonance that centers around 110 Hz. That frequency, as neurological researchers have noted in separate studies, is the same frequency at which measurable changes in human brainwave activity have been observed. The ancient builders did not stumble into this effect by accident. Researcher Yegor Reznikov tested the space extensively and found that every decorated surface in the hypogeum, every painted area, every carved symbol was positioned at the exact point of highest acoustic resonance in each chamber. The art and the sound were designed together, as a unified experience. This was not decoration and architecture built independently. Someone understood how the sound moved through this space, mapped it, and placed their most important symbols at precisely those points. To engineer this deliberately would require a practical understanding of sound behavior, resonant frequencies, and how different stone surfaces absorb or reflect sound waves. That knowledge was not formally codified in any civilization until thousands of years later. Yet here it is, carved into the rock of Malta, in 3600 BC, by people with antler tools. This was not a tomb. It was an instrument, a chamber built to do something to the consciousness of the people inside it. 5,000 years ago in Malta, someone understood how sound shapes the human mind, and they built an entire underground world to prove it. Now here is what I want you to sit with. 8 sites, 8 things that should not exist and yet do. And I want to be honest with you, because the easy version of this story ends with aliens or lost civilizations or some magic technology we have forgotten. But I don't think that is the real story. The real story is more unsettling and more beautiful than any of that. The real story is that human beings, thousands of years ago, with tools we would now find primitive, were doing things we cannot fully replicate or explain. Not because they had outside help, but because they had something we have lost: patience, obsession, an understanding of the world built from watching it every day for generations, without distraction, without noise, just humans and stone and sky and time. They watched the stars every night for centuries. Of course they could align a pyramid to true north. They felt the vibration of sound in rock. Of course they could engineer an acoustic chamber. They had no GPS, but they had generations of living, breathing oral knowledge. Of course they could move stone across 200 miles. What we call impossible, they called necessary. The question these sites are really asking us is not how were they built. It is something harder. It is, what are we capable of if we pay attention long enough? We don't know, not yet, but it is carved into the stone. It has been waiting for thousands of years, and it is still waiting for an answer. If this video made you see the ancient world differently, hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people find this. And if you want more videos like this, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because we go deep on the stories history class never taught you, drop in the comments, which of these 8 sites shocks you the most? I read every single one. See you in the next one.